All right, so you see we finished the paint here. Now we're going to be putting the windshield on. Before you put the windshield on, you have to replace the rubbers because obviously, you know, you got a nice clean surface. You want to replace the rubbers around the windshield. So refitting the windshield on the MGB windshield, we've already been cleaning it off really nice. But this is the puzzle, and this is the purpose for this particular video. The side rubbers that go between the wing window and the windshield are a little complicated. There is no physical visual connectors, and yet you can't just pull it up and there's not a groove. You can't get it to slide back and forth in the groove or whatever. How do you get it out, right? So through a little trial and error on the other side, you took it apart to find out how it all works, right? So here's the deal. You might notice a little divot in the rubber. Might just be a little tiny blemish on the top right there. Well, actually that is covering a screw. The screws are under the rubber and they're hidden by the rubber. So in this case, you can just put a screwdriver in here, and if you just kind of give it a tweak, you can feel that it will catch and it will pull on that screw. And you can actually feel the screw in there, and you'll feel the screwdriver bite on it. And so you get those two screws off, and then you'll have this piece underneath there. In between, there's a very soft, malleable piece of aluminum strip that goes, if here's the brand new one, it goes in that groove right there, right? And there's two screws, one on either end. The holes that you see in the middle there are for rivets. There's actually two rivets in the middle here, right here and here, that hold in a channel. The channel is on the bottom, and if you're looking at the end piece here, you can see the channel goes right along here. So the channel, you hold it, the channel holds the bottom, and that aluminum piece goes over the top of that with two screws, and that's how that's held. Okay, so I got the rubber on the bottom. This was quite a process. First of all, you do it from the other side. The idea here is that you slide this bottom part of the T into the groove, and then you force the other part of the T into the back side of that groove. Now, the thing that you need to try not to do is, well, when you force it with a screwdriver, see if I can do this. You don't want to force the screwdriver into you don't want to force the screwdriver into the T part. You want to just push the flat part, because what happens is, and it happened on me a couple of times, is that the inside portion in there is it's very thin, and you can puncture that with your screwdriver, and you don't want to tear that up. So just when you're pushing it with a screwdriver, or in this case, I actually used this is a windshield tool. It's an installation tool. You want to push it this, and then give it a turn so that it pushes it in. I know it sounds complicated, but anyway, just don't tear it when you're pushing it, and just take your time. It took me like an hour and a half or 2 hours. You can only go like a half an inch at a time every time that you're going. Slide it in from the back and push it in from the top, and you'll get to the end. When you get to the end, it's a lot longer and so you have to kind of cut it when you get to where you're at. The trick with that is resist cutting it at an angle. You might want to think, oh, there's an angle here, right? Maybe I should cut it at an angle. You want to resist that. because the way that this sets, you want it to set out onto the car, right? So you don't want to cut this at an angle. You want to cut it flat, just like the factory cut. So the next step here is to get these little end caps here in place and drop the windshield in. These side pieces, they go right in here, and there's a little channel. I don't know if you can see the little channel, and then they slide in there. The trick with that is that there's a hole where a screw goes right there. You see this hole? And what I've done is transposed a line so that once you get it in there, you'll know where the line is. And I went ahead and taped off and moved the line so that I can see it. Once you get it in place, you want to slide it down so that you can cut the end of this to match the angle of this, right? So this goes flat, but you want it to match the angle. But what I would highly recommend is don't put this in until after you've put the windshield in, because this piece here sits on the door and this piece sits on the hood. So they're uneven surfaces. So if you're trying to match it up with here, it's not going to be the same. So what you can do is you can pre-cut it so that it matches up with that angle, and then take it out. And then when you get ready to... All right, so here's an example of how to get the angles for the end of this. You want to match this angle and that angle. And you can see this is what it looks like when you cut it off. You want to match that angle, and you want to match this angle. So it's kind of a complex angle, but don't screw it in place, because once you get it in place, then you're going to want to match it up with the door. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this one live. So again, you want to match this angle right here, and you want to match this angle right here. So the way that I found to do that is, I don't know if you can see, lay the razor out so that it matches the first angle. And if you can see, I'm matching with this surface right there. So I want to match and make that parallel, right? So now, if you're looking at this blade, if I were just to go straight down, that wouldn't be, I wouldn't match. Now I know where it's going to go. Now I need to match this angle. So then you set the blade so that it's oriented to match this angle right here. So now you have your complex set of angles. One that goes this way and one that goes this way. And then just saw, it's much easier with a loose blade because you don't have all the other stuff. You just kind of saw gently back and forth. It's a really soft rubber, and then you'll get right through it. So we're getting ready to put the windshield in there. I want to prep out. This is a Bondo putty blade. It's very flexible, and I've cleaned it off. Make sure there's nothing that can scratch the paint. I've got a bottle here with a little bit of dishwashing fluid in a spray bottle, because we're gonna, once the rubber gets in there, we're gonna want to move it around, so we're gonna lubricate it with that. And this is probably the best time for you to clean that little vinyl piece that goes where the defroster vents are. In my case, we put this in before we painted. It might be a better idea to wait until after you've finished painting and then put that in there, because it spent a lot of time with masking tape on it, so there's a lot of schmooge that kind of developed. But right now is the time to clean that, because it'll be harder to clean once the windshield's in place. All Alright, so all configured here. I got a little mixture of dish soap and water to spray on here. Makes the rubber, when we adjust it, will be a lot easier to deal with. I pre-positioned the screws for the center post. Got a wrench ready. This is a Bondo blade. It's really soft, pliable plastic. It's all clean. There's nothing on it that's going to scratch the paint. That'll be good for sliding it out when we get it going. Alright, let's put the windshield in. Around the rubber. Take your little slide and you can push it in from the outside, or from the inside, I'm sorry. Get it going. There you go. Okay. Okay, so the whole thing needs to move back that way. There you go. See that? Line it up. Okay, both of these got squished funny right there, huh?
Where are we?
I don't like that that's doubled over. This kind of doesn't match the right direction. There you go. Okay, that's right. See that?
Yeah. You need to do the same thing yours. Color piece.
So basically just adjusting these to make sure that they mash out in a nice uniform manner. You get a good transition between the two pieces of rubber.
Okay.
So just a quick rundown. You see the windshield's in. This little foot piece, see how the bottom edge is squashed out? You need to get a good squash on that. That way it's got some compression and it will keep water from getting in there. At the end of the front rubber, there was a bit of a loop right here. I pulled that up and cut it off so that it would come, I don't know, get really close here. It would come nice and flush with that without getting a loop. I didn't want to make a hole for water to be introduced in. But all along this crack right here, it will receive a bead of black silicone. It had one in there before. You can see there's a stain. It was kind of a waxy, almost tar-like material that they used on the original installation. But we're going to use black silicone. It's a bit more resilient, and it's really good for water. And then another one goes in right up here, part of the original equipment. There was a piece of kind of a black tar, kind of plasticky filler. We're going to put some black silicone, just a quick little bead in there and make it look really pretty. Now, the vertical post. So I went through a part of the video about how to cut the angle for the vertical post. And you can see in here how the angle matches up with the other rubber pieces. But I didn't want to screw that in place until you get it in place, and you want to test it against the tolerance of this edge of the door. And you'll see when you close the door, you want it to just feather, barely touch that, so that when it opens and closes, that's not going to be a problem. See, barely touching right there. And then once you get all that in there, you'll cut that slack off. I've got the registration marks here for where the screws are going to go, both here and here. And so we'll screw those in and it'll be good to go. I haven't installed the wing windows yet, but I just wanted to put this in there to get a good idea of what the tolerances are and what's going to move what and how everything smashes. But the only thing you have to worry about in here is where the bottom of the door, or the top of the door, hits the bottom of that rubber, and that's going to give you a good seal. All right, so quick revision. I decided to let this run down a little bit closer and then make a little gap for the door, because when the door was closed, I could physically see the air showing. So it's going to be something that will whistle and make noise down the road. So go ahead and make this as custom as you can to fit the door. The idea here is just to get the angles right so that when everything is closed, you don't have any gaps. So you can see I recut it so that the door would not trip on it, but it would close against it. Let me show you what I'm talking about with the gaps. Now again, my wing window is not tight yet, so see, by letting the door grab it, and there's no gaps in there. You can see a little bit of a gap. I don't think that that's going to be a problem, but before it had a hole, I could see air through it. So hopefully you can make a little adjustment in there. Just get it right before you cut the top. You don't want to cut the top until you get what you want out of this intersection right here.